What's going on, everybody? Khalipa's Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G. Now, as the name suggests, this phone is the successor of the Samsung Galaxy A52 5G that came out last year around this time. So in this video, I'm going to be going over everything you need to know about this phone to help you decide whether or not it's the right one for you. Now, before we go any further, I do want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot. But with that being said, let's get started. So the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G has a 6.5-inch 120Hz Super AMOLED display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 405, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of about 85.4%. So this is definitely a real high-quality display. As far as size goes, it's pretty much right in the middle. I want to say the vast majority of smartphones nowadays are around 6.5 inches, so this is nothing really special. But at the same time, we're still going to be getting the advantages of having a larger display, so things are going to show up nice and large and be easier to see. But at the same time, it's not so large that it's uncomfortable to hold in your hand or carry in your pocket. For comparison's sake here, my iPhone 13 is 6.1 inches, and as you can see, the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G is much larger, so if you're going to be consuming a lot of content, then this is going to be a great thing. Now, in addition to this, with an aspect ratio of 20:9, this display is not only large, but we're getting a good, tall, narrow form factor here. So if you're streaming videos in landscape mode, for example, things are going to look a lot better, and if you're reading something, you'll be able to fit more on the screen without having to scroll as much. So overall, in terms of size and dimensions, I am really happy with this display. Now, in addition to just being large, another probably pretty obvious thing about this display is that it's really high quality. With the 1080p resolution, we got a nice, sharp, crisp image, so whether you're streaming videos, viewing photos, playing games, no matter what you're doing on this phone, it's gonna look great. And as expected with a phone that has a Super AMOLED display, the colors are nice and vibrant, the screen is really bright, and we got some good viewing angles as well. So in general, if you're looking for a phone with a really good display, if that's something that's super important to you, the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G is going to be a great option. Now with this phone, we're getting 128GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so that's definitely a pretty good amount of storage. For the average user, that's pretty much all you're ever going to need. To fill up that kind of space, you need to have a lot of apps, lots of photos and videos, stuff like that, but there are definitely people out there who do use that much storage and probably more than that. And if you are one of those people, that's why it's so good that this phone does have microSD card expansion as well, because there are some phones in this price range maybe a little step up from this, like the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE for example, or maybe the iPhone SE. Those phones, while having some better features than this phone, don't have microSD card expansion, so if you have lots of photos and videos and stuff like that and your space is just getting really full on those phones, you're kinda out of luck. But with this phone, you can use a microSD card to expand the storage even more, so that's definitely something to think about. Now in addition to this, keep in mind that there is another variant of this phone out there that has 256GB instead of 128, but this specific phone in my hand does only have 128. But all the same, again, 128GB is a great amount of storage for most people, so unless you're a real power user, you're probably going to be fine with this. Now there's no wireless charging with this phone, which is not really that surprising honestly, because as of 2022, for whatever reason, most phones that aren't flagship phones still don't have that feature, but we are getting a fingerprint scanner here in the display. Definitely real nice looking, makes the phone look and feel really premium. And as you can see, it works even with the screen off. Let's try that one more time. And there we go. So you don't even need to turn on the display to use the fingerprint scanner. Now, maybe most in-display fingerprint scanners work like this. I probably just never noticed, but let's try that one more time. Yeah, that's real fast and responsive. Definitely a nice fingerprint scanner here. And we got face unlock here as well, so in case you don't want to use the fingerprint scanner or can't for some reason, then you can always use that instead. Now to give you a quick rundown of the camera setup here, we got a front facing camera up here, hole punch design, looks real nice. This camera is 32 megapixels. And then on the back here, we got a quad camera setup with a 64 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 5 megapixel macro camera, and a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera. Now this camera setup is real nice and can take some real high quality photos, so let's take a look so you can see for yourself. Now here are some photos taken with the main camera. As you can see, these photos were taken in the evening during a sunset, so we got some pretty low lighting here, but all the same, the photos turned out real nice. Night mode works really well, so if you want to take a bunch of different types of pictures, you're definitely going to get that kind of versatility with this phone. Now here are some pictures taken in more normal lighting. The colors look really nice here, super bright, pretty much everything you could ask for in a smartphone camera. And even though this is really more of a mid-range phone, I would say the quality is up there with iPhones and stuff like the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE and all those other higher end phones in general. Now here are some photos taken with the ultra-wide camera, same kind of thing, and with the ultra-wide camera of a mid-range phone you might expect a little bit of distortion, especially around the edges, but we're really not getting that with this phone. It still looks really good, so if you're taking more scenery-based photos, this is definitely going to be a good thing. Now here's a photo taken with the front-facing camera in portrait mode, and especially for a front-facing camera, it definitely did well. Now this is kinda interesting because even though this phone doesn't have a telephoto lens, you can actually take some really high-quality closer-up photos using just the digital zoom. So these photos were taken at about 3x, and as you can see, the details still look pretty sharp, especially considering, again, we only have digital zoom here, so I was really expecting it to be super grainy, but it's really not. So overall, with the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G, you can take some really high quality photos. The camera has a lot of versatility, so whether you're taking photos of a sunset at night, something like that, or maybe pictures of a skyline or some sort of scenery with the ultra-wide camera, or just regular photos in general, this phone is going to get the job done no matter what. And even though there are flagship phones out there that have better quality cameras, for most people, I feel like this is pretty much all you're going to need. Now for video, this phone has a max quality of 4K at 30 frames per second in the rear and front cameras. Now it's a little odd to me that it caps out at 30 frames per second. I wish it went up to 60, but at the same time, the likelihood of you actually needing to use that quality may or may not be that high. It really just kind of depends on what you're doing. So if you do want to take some real high quality videos with a super high frame rate, then you might want to get something like the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE that actually can shoot in 4K at 60 frames per second. But again, for most people, I do think this quality is going to be completely fine. Now here's a video I actually shot in 4K at 30 frames per second. Now of course, the video you're watching is only 1080p, so you're not going to be able to see the full quality, but at the same time, you kind of get the idea from this video. So if you don't necessarily need 60 frames per second in 4K, but you want to take some good quality videos, maybe B-roll or something like that, then this phone is definitely going to get the job done. Now internally, the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G is getting 6GB of RAM with the Samsung Exynos 1280 processor. And of course, as the name suggests, this phone does have 5G connectivity, so definitely keep that in mind because although of course 4G is not going away anytime soon, 5G really is the future. So if you want access to that 5G network and really the best and latest technology as it starts to advance, then getting a 5G phone now really won't hurt. And for that purpose, a phone like this is definitely a great choice. Now that being said, I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone, and it came back with a single core score of 742 and a multi-core score of 1910, so we definitely got a real powerful processor here. Compared to other phones around this price range, pretty much the only things that are going to beat this are flagship phones, like the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE for example. That phone is much more powerful than this, and then the iPhone SE 2022 that just came out. Now I don't know if you'd necessarily want that phone, but it does have a stronger processor than this. But the point is, there are not very many phones, especially ones that are considered mid-range phones, that are going to beat this. In fact, as of right now, I don't really even know of any mid-range phones that have more processing power than this, at least according to this test, which granted, you should take these tests with a grain of salt because at the end of the day, the real experience you get using the phone is the most important part anyway. But that being said, what I do recommend doing is running this test on your current phone and comparing your scores to these to see really whether or not it's going to be an upgrade. Now, depending on what you have, I kind of have a feeling this phone will be an upgrade for most people, unless you have a flagship phone of course. But in general, I will say this is a really fast phone with a really powerful processor, and I've had no performance issues using it so far. So no matter what you're doing, whether you're doing more basic activities like social media, web browsing, that sort of thing, or maybe you're streaming videos on HBO Max or Peacock or something like that, or maybe you're doing mobile gaming, no matter what you throw at this phone, it's probably going to handle it pretty well. So whether you're an average user who doesn't really do a whole lot with your phone, or you're a power user and you're on your phone constantly, no matter what, if processing power is important to you, you're really not going to go wrong with this phone. Now for the battery, this phone has a 5000 mAh battery that supports 25 watt fast charging. So this is real good. Not only are we getting pretty much the largest battery you can get in a smartphone, but this phone also supports pretty good fast charging as well. So if you're in one of those situations where you don't have a whole lot of time to wait for your phone to charge up, if you have the right fast charger, this is going to save you quite a bit of time. And then as far as the actual battery life goes, this phone's battery life is going to be really good despite a lot of power consuming features it has, like the 120Hz Super AMOLED display. As you can probably imagine, a display of this quality is going to consume quite a bit more power than something like a basic LCD display, for example. But despite that, this phone does seem to be pretty battery efficient so far. Now granted, I haven't been using it for that long, so I can't really give a super accurate description of really how the battery life holds up, but I will say if you're using the phone just a moderate amount and not leaving the screen on 24/7 or anything like that, then you should be completely fine. Now as far as other features go, this phone has IP67 dust and water resistance, so we're getting a little more durability here. And it also has NFC, so you can use Google Pay, Samsung Pay, and other services like that you might have. I also got Amex Pay here. Apparently that does work. I haven't actually tried it out yet, but it is cool to see that it's an option. But now that we've gone over some of the specs of the phone, let's take a closer look at the device itself. So there's nothing on the left side here. On the bottom, we got the slot for the SIM card and the microSD card, the microphone, a USB-C port, and the speaker. On the right side, we got the power key, volume down, volume up. On the top, we got the noise canceling microphone. And on the back, we got the camera setup and Samsung branding right here. We got this nice matte finish, and you really can't see any fingerprints at all. So overall, I really do like the design of this phone. The bezels are really thin and it has a nice sleek modern look. And on top of the fact that it has an in-display fingerprint scanner, again, this looks really modern and premium. So it's definitely a nice touch. But one thing I will say is that despite it looking really nice and having a decent amount of weight to it, it would be nice if it wasn't all plastic. I mean, everything on this phone except for the display, of course, is plastic. And it would be nice if we got some metal around here, or maybe a little glass on the back, something like that, just to make it feel a little more premium. But again, this isn't really a flagship phone, it is a mid-range phone, so we can't really expect too much. Overall, I do like the design. The only real complaint I have is that it doesn't have a headphone jack. Now for me personally, I don't think I've used a pair of wired headphones for a couple years now, so it doesn't really affect me at all, but I know there are plenty of people out there who still do like to use those regular headphones, and if you're one of those people, that's going to be a huge drawback for you. But if you don't mind that, the design of this phone is really sleek and modern, and all nitpicking aside, I don't really have any complaints. But in conclusion, my general thoughts about the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G. Now, is this a huge upgrade from the Samsung Galaxy A52 5G? No, not really. It's pretty much the same thing, except for a few features here and there that have been tweaked, and it does have a stronger processor, but other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. So at the end of the day, whether or not you should get this phone or that phone, that's most likely going to come down to what kind of deals you can get. But in general, by itself, I do think this phone is one of the best, if not the best phone you can get without going full flagship. Now, if you want to learn more about this phone, stay tuned for my later videos where I'm going to be comparing it to several others and showing you some tips and tricks to get more used to using it as well. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. But as always, I will see you in the next video.